Now call the Board of Education, Wichita Board of Education, July 29, 2024 meeting in order. The Wichita Public Schools will be the premier district of choice and inspire each student and staff member to thrive and become future ready within the greater community. Roll call, all 7 board members are here tonight. Would you please join with me with me for a moment of silence? Thank you. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Northeast Magnet High School JROTC cadets, Officer in Charge, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Natalie Ordez, Left Guard Cadet Second Lieutenant Marco Aguirre, American Flag Cadet First Sergeant Melissa Williams, Staff Flag Cadet State Flag, Staff Major Jaden Patton, and the Right Guard Cadet Lance Corporal Jose Sapin. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. You may post the colors.
Center, march! Post! Post the colors!
We truly appreciate our JROTC. The round of applause for the Northeast Magnet High School. We truly appreciate our JROTC. They do such a great job every meeting, and they are true leaders in their own individual schools. So thank you again. Patrick, first item, please.
First item, under student success, good news.
Welcome, Wendy.
Albert, Superintendent Bielefeld, and members of the board, I'm Wendy Johnson in Strategic Communications. It is indeed an honor to be here with you to share 3 items related to student success tonight. And even better, before the school year has officially started, we have students here to share in those items with you this evening. So the goodness is all around us. So the first 2 items, you will learn more from Dr. Lauren Hatfield, our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools. But I want to let you know that we will celebrate Educators Rising, which is a national educator preparation program and is really a beautiful example of how we're working to grow our own. And Erin Matlock from Southeast High School took a group of students to the national competition this year, and you will have a chance to meet them and learn more about their good work. And then our second item, every time I watch the Olympics, I think of our friends at Gordon Parks Academy, knowing that Miss Kennedy took students and they were in the very place that our Olympians are right now. How cool is that? That our students had the chance to go to Paris, France this spring and trace in the footsteps of Kansas native Gordon Parks and learn all about his masterful storytelling and creative genius. So to learn more about both of those items and to meet the students that had those lived experiences, Dr. Lauren Hatfield is here to tell you more.
Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce the adults in charge of these because they get to say all the fun things. I don't want to steal any thunder that they have. So for Educators Rising is the student organization that accompanies our CTE teaching pathway. It is a national organization that aims to cultivate a new generation of highly skilled educators by helping young people explore teaching as a profession, gain practical experience, and develop the necessary skills to succeed in the classroom. Erin Matlock is an English teacher and the teaching pathway instructor at South High School, and she's here to tell you about attending the National Educators Rising Conference earlier this summer in Washington, D.C.
Welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having us. So Educators Rising, like Dr. Hatfield said, is all about preparation and support for our future teachers and future educators. It is our CTSO that accompanies the CTE teaching pathway, and we currently have Educators Rising in 6 Wichita high schools. Our students participate and compete in regional and state conferences each year with Educators Rising, and the competitions are very varied, but they all contribute to gaining essential teaching skills. To qualify for the National Educators Rising Conference, students have to score a 95% on their competition, and they have to place in first or second in their competition. So this year we had 3 students achieve this honor: Haley Mejia from North, Tara Shea Boyd, and Ollie Davis from South. We are very thankful for our school communities and our partners who donated to help our students get to the national conference in Washington, D.C. this year. So this conference was the biggest ever for Ed Rising. There was 3,300 students there from all over the nation, and they got to hear amazing keynote speakers like from the National Teacher of the Year and from the Assistant Secretary from the U.S. Department of Education. They attended sessions on leadership and classroom management, fostering equity, differentiation, and more. They also competed against hundreds of students from across the nation and got to have a lot of fun too. This also allowed them to see our nation's capital, which was amazing. They toured multiple museums, landmarks, saw monuments, they saw the White House, they got to go to the Library of Congress, they saw all the monuments in DC, but I know you want to hear from the students. So first, they're going to talk to you about what Educators Rising means to them, how it has helped them in their future, and what they enjoyed about the trip. So first, we have Haley Mejia from North.
And Haley, you are our very first student of the 24-25 year, so welcome.
Thank you. So Educators Rising means a lot to me. It's really got me into wanting to be a teacher and really expand my knowledge into what it's going to be like as a future educator. It's prepared me a lot for the future because it's shown me that you can see different classrooms, you can see how different students affect your life, how you affect their lives, and how important it is to have teachers everywhere. And I got to see that, and I really enjoyed the trip because it was such a great opportunity getting to meet other future people that wanted to be educators with me, and getting to know them for the rest of my teaching career.
Hi, I'm Tara Shea Boyd. I was a competitor at South. Educators Rising in itself means the world to me. It has helped me create so many connections with teachers and with other students that also want to be educators. And in terms of like preparing for the future, I think that the opportunities that Educators Rising has presented to me have been overwhelmingly helpful. I've gotten to network with a lot of teachers, and I've gotten to learn how to analyze my relationships with my teachers to see how to better myself for the future. And it's given me a lot of insight on who I want to be as a teacher. And my favorite part of the trip was, I want to say, just getting to explore DC, as well as getting to see all of these different students and learn about all of their different experiences and getting insight on things like, we had a session about like AI being integrated into teaching, and I thought that that was really interesting because that's something that I want to learn a lot about. So yeah, it's taught me so much about the profession and about the people.
On the screen, you can see a few of our photos from the conference. So that's some of our keynote speakers and us enjoying the conference. And on the next slide, you can see, let me see if I can do that, some of the wonderful things we saw, all the monuments and things around DC. So thank you so much for having us and letting us tell you a little bit about Educators Rising and our trip.
And thank you for being such great ambassadors for the Wichita Public Schools. Yes. Aaron, before you leave, Melody,
say,
go ahead.
You have some questions or comments for
Yes.
Aaron or the kids?
Yes, actually for both Haley and Malia? No, Haley and Tara Shea. Yes, both. First of all, it is just a pleasure and an honor to have you here to tell us about your experience, your interest in the profession. I love the fact that Tara Shea said profession, and the way that you said it, Tara Shea, just really did make me feel proud of being a former teacher, proud of being a part of the Board of Education, just proud of America and our educational system that we have, our public education system, and the state of Kansas. So I just wanted to tell both of you that. And can you tell me, I know you scored high, you scored high. So what did you do? I mean, what were your projects?
So actually, I wrote a children's literature book. I illustrated it and wrote it, and I think it was more, I really like art, and I just want to expand more into that. And I included Educators Rising. I was like, I do two things that I love, and I already want to become a teacher, and I already love, and I know I'm gonna love doing that. So I just knew, why not just combine both? Mm-hmm. And I decided to take it seriously this year and put myself at hard work.
Wonderful. I can feel the passion. I can feel the passion.
I explored a non-core teaching subject. So for roughly about 7 years, I was a choir student. And so I decided to observe my choir teacher at the moment, Mrs. Sessions. And I got to sit in her classroom for about 8 hours, and I just observed her. And then I wrote a small report on it, and I answered some interview questions, and I interviewed her. And yeah, I got to learn a lot about how she works and about how teaching choir works, because that's something that I was interested in at the time. So yeah, that's what I chose to do.
It sounds like maybe you've morphed from choir to other things, maybe AI integrated.
Kind of. So the AI was kind of just something that I found interesting because it would help with what I actually do want to do now, which I want to teach secondary English.
Okay.
And they taught us a lot about how you can like create lesson plans with AI and things like that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. I'm encouraged. I'm excited. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know where Sean is, but we're going to need some open contracts here pretty fast,
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
for these kids. Next up is Miss LaTanya Kennedy, who is the principal at Gordon Parks Academy, which is one of our K-8s here in Wichita, and the amazing opportunity that they had to go to Paris and learn about Gordon Parks. And I don't want to steal any of their thunder and the amazingness of their trip. I may or may not have followed it on Facebook posts and tried to pretend like I was there,
Yeah.
but they're going to tell you all about that experience.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, distinguished board members. It is a pleasure to be here. As she said, I'm LaTanya Kennedy, the proud principal of Gordon Parks Academy, and Miss Diane Albert is our proud board member. So we're excited to be here. I wanted to give the students an opportunity to speak, but I thought that I would give you some background on how this entire trip happened. 9 students, 7th and 8th graders from Gordon Parks Academy were invited to travel to Paris, France to trace the footsteps of Gordon Parks, who is a famous photographer, videographer. He is a Renaissance man from our native Kansas, born in Fort Scott, Kansas. And we were invited by Professor Dwayne Cheers, who happened to meet a community member at a conference, and she was telling him the wonderful things that were happening at Gordon Parks. So he went to our website and gave me a call in August before last school year and said, I'd like to take a Paris trip with students. And I thought, how are we going to do that? But we did. With the help of our community, after Professor invited us to come, the yearbook class was given the charge of writing an essay, paying the $350 deposit, and getting their passport. Of the class, 9 of those students completed the task, and off to Paris and fundraising we began. I want to make a special point to say that all of the funds were donated by our community, and I think that's very important, thinking about the community support that we had. Students from Gordon Parks Academy, after completing this task, were able to travel to Paris, France, May the 27th. One of our community partners, the Arise Incorporated group, also 4 members from Arise went because they were invited to sing at the American Cathedral. So, with us all headed to Paris, some of them their very first time leaving the United States, Wichita, the Northeast community, their families. We all forged our way to Paris, France, and it was amazing. It was amazing to see the reactions of the students as the plane took off. Every component of that trip was exciting. Students were greeted at the American Embassy by Lawrence Randolph. He's the Minister Counselor for Public Diplomacy. We were greeted at the Hotel de Talleyrand, and he said that his greeting us was happenstance because he was going to also be greeting our president the next day. So we felt very special to be treated that way. Not only did they have that opportunity, we toured every iconic site in France. We were up at 8 o'clock in the morning on public transportation by 8:30, did not get back to our rooms until 11 o'clock. So we clocked about 10,000 steps every day. It was fabulous. Also, we had the opportunity to work with students from France. Professor Cheers had commissioned a model to join us, and so students from Gordon Parks Academy and students from France were able to work together to do a photo shoot. That was absolutely phenomenal to see our students working with students who didn't speak English, and they were working together to make this happen. I would say that this trip was very epic, and most of all, it was a trajectory-changing experience for every student who attended. And so with that said, I'd like to give these students an opportunity to kind of tell you a little bit about their experience, because I could go on all day about how we had a wonderful time. So I have Kristen Lodato Cox here, and he will be an 8th grader next year at Gordon Parks Academy, and I will have him speak first. You ready? He's a little nervous. Your name and then tell me about your trip.
Hello, I am Christian, and the trip, well, it was amazing. I'd say, well, my favorite part about the trip was probably the catacombs. it was just something about it that was just breathtaking. And then of course there was the Eiffel Tower. It was a beautiful sight, and we even went there when it was lit up. And working with Mr. Cheers was pretty good. And also taking pictures of the models as well. It was so out of all of it, it was an amazing trip. And I hope that we get to have more trips like this one in the future.
And this is Miss Odyssey Taylor.
It was good. My favorite part was the catacombs too, because I liked seeing the skulls and like reading. There was like the parts where you could read it and like learn about the history of it. I liked the hotel too, and I liked our tourists. They were funny, and yeah, I like the subways because I've never been in a subway, so metro or whatever it's called.
Thank you. And I would like to add that the purpose of the trip also, besides tracing his footsteps, were to make a documentary. It's called I Needed Paris, and it will debut actually in Fort Scott at the Gordon Parks Museum, and it'll debut during their Gordon Park celebration the first week of October. The film has also been submitted for the Wichita Tallgrass Festival, and so I will let you know how that goes once we have a final word.
Thank
Okay?
you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, we would love to get that information.
Yes.
Yes, Kathy?
Madam Principal,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to do a kudos to you. There's not a lot of people who may have been able to see that this was a possibility, and you seized on this opportunity for the sake of these kids and the experiences they've had. My first experience was a bus from St. Louis to Kansas City at the age of 12. Look what these guys have gotten, and this is a trip that they will never, ever forget. So thank you for making this happen. I don't think our principals get enough out of girls and out of boys, and so I wanted to publicly thank you for doing this for these kids.
Thank you.
I just want to echo really quick what Ms. Bond said. LaTanya wasn't going to take no for an answer when she found out about this opportunity. Basically, she said, if you're going to tell me no, you better find a way to make it a yes. Yes, ma'am, was that answer. Ms. Kennedy is a fierce, fierce advocate for her students in her building, but also all the students in Wichita Public Schools. And we are very blessed that she is one of our principals in our secondary schools. And then for our students at the Educators Rising Conference, Ms. Matlock is a top-notch, fabulous English teacher at South High, and if we could just replicate her and what she does and her passion for students, both as English students but also as students who are going to be teachers one day, Wichita Public Schools will be a better place. So it's pretty amazing to watch adults break down barriers for kids and understand that that's our job. So I just wanted to lift both of them up before Wendy comes back and shares our third good news item. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Lauren. That was a perfect summary.
Think about the life-changing experiences that we give kids. That I got goosebumps. That is really, really special. So thanks to all of the adults that made it happen. And moms and dads, thank you for allowing your kids to take leaps of faith and do something really big and really special. They will not forget the opportunity. Things like this don't happen without community partners who are equally as willing to not take no for an answer, to stand in the gap, to do what it takes to support our kids and our teachers. We thought it was fitting as we start the year and look ahead to a week from tomorrow to do something that is equally big and new and perhaps life-changing, certainly something that will be a first for us that I'll mention in just a moment. But the partner that is making that happen in our district are friends from Credit Union of America. So I would like to invite Frank Schaffner, President at CUA, and Bradley Dyer, Senior Business Development Specialist, forward. I want to share a couple of more things with you before I ask Mr. Schaffner to share a word. Tonight is really an opportunity to say thank you. Many of you know, perhaps all of you know, about Credit Union's beginnings. Gentlemen, please come up. Credit Union's beginnings in the halls of East High School. For literally generations, CUA has had a role in supporting the success of teachers and students in the Wichita Public Schools. During the past year alone, Credit Union of America has been all in through their support of new teacher induction, which this year begins on Thursday, the Legacy Golf Classic, creation of the Wichita Public Schools Foundation, for which Mr. Schaffner graciously agreed to serve as president as we get started, and support of the foundation's kickoff breakfast that occurred just a month ago. Next week, as I mentioned, we have another first that Credit Union of America is making possible, our first ever all-staff gathering. Yes, all staff, all of us, at Wichita's Riverfront Stadium for Rally on the River. And it's going to be an epic day that our friends at CUA have helped to make possible. We want to take the opportunity, as I said, to recognize and celebrate Mr. Schaffner and Mr. Dyer and invite Mr. Schaffner forward to say a few words. But before I do so, please know that on behalf of the Wichita Public Schools, the Board of Education, and 47,000 students, we are sincerely and deeply grateful for your willingness to say yes and to support all that we represent for this community. So a small token of our appreciation vis-a-vis this certificate, but know that our hearts are full and we truly appreciate you and everything that you do for our kids. So.
Welcome, Frank, again.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you so much. You know, I was asking Bradley when we were out in the parking lot, I said, now, what are we supposed to do here tonight? And he goes, I think you're supposed to speak or say a few words or something. I was like, okay. So, I guess I'd just say, first of all, thanks. Wendy was a great MC at our kickoff breakfast that we had. We felt that was a very good, very big success to get things started. We have money coming in. Don't ask me how much, because I don't know yet. We'll find out here in a week or so when we have our meeting. But I feel honored, humbled to be part of that foundation. I have to say, Bradley here kind of set it up for me. He's always out here in the schools working, and went to the foundation up in Olathe, I believe it was, or something like that. Comes back and says, "Hey, let's get interested, or I know you'd be interested in this. Let's be a part of it." I said, "Sure. Let's see what we can do to help." And so it's really Bradley that got us or me in here. So. And that's kind of what he does. You know, he gets all these things set up for us, and it's always to help the kids, help the teachers, help the educators. So I have to say thanks to Bradley, because he's the guy. And I knew if I came here by myself, because I asked him, he just got back from vacation. I said, "Are you going tonight?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll be there." And I said, "Well, that's good, because if I go by myself, everybody goes, 'Well, where's Bradley?'" You know? So I was glad he showed up. But I think we're going to do some good things with the foundation. And I don't think enough kudos go out to Kelly and Holly, Eric, I'm going to miss her, Susan, I guess, in that, because they're the drivers, and then us board members. We're just there to try to help, guide, see what we can do, and to move it forward, because we think we can really do a lot of good things. I've had several people that were at the foundation kickoff that were excited. Now they have a way they can give back and give to the schools. So we're expecting big things. So, and once again, thanks for letting me be a part of it. I appreciate it too. So, and you want to say a word? You okay? He's kind of shy tonight. So. But thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, public communications.
No speakers signed up tonight.
Correct.
Okay. Next item, please.
Next item, consent.
Kathy, do you have any items to pull?
I have nothing.
Julie?
Nothing to pull.
Melody? Nothing. Diane?
Nothing to pull.
I'm going to pull E16, which is the Nike contract. Hazel?
I'd like to pull E15, which is the Wichita Metro Transit Authority.
Okay. And Knock?
I have nothing to pull.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda except for E15 and E16. Second. Moved by Stan, seconded by Julie. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Hazel, since E15 comes for E16, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Stan. So my question is, it's concerning the Wichita Metro Transit Authority, and I understand that we have many different components or many different entities that are providing transportation, and this has to do with public transportation, which is and it's a big number, $385,000. So what my question is, how many students use this service? And do we pay a monthly fee? Are we getting a discount? Is it unlimited service? Just kind of an explanation of what this transportation service is.
So I'll introduce Fabian, but I did something I knew better than I should have done, and I tried to answer this question this afternoon, and I was wrong with my answer. So I talked to Fabian and invited him tonight to come and explain. I was close, but I was wrong. So to explain about this one in particular, maybe kind of how do we decide who goes on which bus or which transportation method to start the school year? I think it's a good time to visit it.
Well, good evening, President Reeser, Vice President Albert, members of the board, Superintendent Bielefeld. My name is Fabian Armendariz, and I'm the Director of Operations for the school district. First of all, I got to give credit to Mr. Reeser, who many moons ago he was part of the Transit Authority Board and was able to kind of begin and planted the seeds for this partnership. This partnership has grown over the last few years to the point where we now have about 11 buses that are serving the Wichita Public Schools. Now, as you all know, we have First Student as our primary transportation provider. They provide our yellow buses. But as we found ourselves in a driver shortage situation, we started looking for alternatives. And Wichita Transit meets that alternative for us. Now, as part of our First Student agreement, they have the right of first refusal, meaning they should have first dibs at pretty much every route that we put out there. But because they don't have enough drivers, we are able to go to the outside. Wichita Transit, like any other transit authority across the country, has certain sets of guidelines that they must follow in order for them to transport our kids. One of them being that their routes can't change like ours. We typically change routes every day of the week as students move. They cannot, because their routes have to be posted and they have to remain static, I believe, for at least 3 months. So because of that, there are only certain routes or certain areas of the city that we can utilize transit for. And so as you all know, Southeast has some transit buses. What happens is they go along Harry Street and they pick up students that live along Harry Street. Those students walk to Harry. Those stops never change. And those routes are the same routes or follow the same routes that our public uses. And so if a student was to miss a bus, not that I want to advertise this, but 45 minutes later they could hop on the same bus and still get to Southeast. But because of that, we're limited where they can serve us. Plus, they also have a limited number of buses that they can make available to us. So again, right now we're running 11 routes, and the way that we pay for that service is on a per day basis. And so we pay $2.30 per student per day, which adds up to I think around $391 per student per year, which is about 50% of what we would pay for first student per day. So it's much more cost effective, but again, we're limited on where we can do those routes. We've been running pretty much the same routes with transit for the last couple of years, but this year they told us that they were able to add another one, and so that's where we added Jardine, and now we're able to service Jardine using Wichita Transit. So that's really kind of a little bit of the background behind Wichita Transit. I know there were some questions also about EverDriven. And EverDriven we utilize for specialized transportation. As you all know, we have to transport students due to McKinney-Vento because they're homeless, so we transport them to their school of origin. We have some special education students that we transport, as well as our CTE transportation. It doesn't make sense for us to send a bus to the south side of the city to only pick up one student. And that's where EverDriven meets our individualized need, where it's going to be cheaper for us to contract with EverDriven, send out a vehicle for $70 a trip, rather than paying the $378 that we pay per bus per day to first student. So again, we try to maximize our resources as much as we can, but really this has been probably the most efficient that we've ran, partially because of the driver shortage, because it's forced us to shrink, but also because we have these other alternatives, where in the past we used to send a big bus to go pick up a student across the city. Now we have EverDriven that can do that at a portion of the cost of what we used to pay.
Kathy, oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Hazel.
When you when we're transporting these children, are they exclusive on the bus, or are there other riders?
By law, they can't be exclusive.
They can't be?
They can't be. And so they are. But I will tell you, no one in our community wants to ride with high school students, so they're exclusive.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy?
Last year for this?
I don't have the exact amount. I think it was similar, but I should have looked. I apologize. I don't. Again, this amount that we're requesting for tonight should serve around 750 to 800 students. And there's a little bit of a contingency amount there, partially because if there is an opportunity for transit to add another route, we want to hop on that opportunity. And so because of that, there's a little bit of contingency built there. But as far as how much we spent last year, I don't have that exact amount.
So we don't know
I can
if
get that later.
going up or going down or staying the same. I just wanted a comparison.
Yeah.
I don't think the rate has changed much. I don't believe so. I think we've stayed pretty static, but I'll verify with Lisa.
But have the amount of students increased?
Oh,
that need
little by
this?
little, yeah. And this year will increase a little because of
So the
Jardine.
cost should go up then?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you all so much.
Hazel, do you want to make a motion, or do you?
Oh, yes. I move that we pass E15, Wichita Metro Transit Authority.
Moved by Hazel, seconded by Melody. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. E16 is the Nike Athletic Uniform Agreement. I know there's questions out in the community about this agreement, so Kelly, I just wanted to give staff an opportunity to explain the basics of the who, what, and whys.
Well, I will call on Coach A, who knows everything. So he is here to tell us all about this agreement.
How are you guys doing today?
Thank you.
So this contract is basically the contract that we had last year, where it was BSN and Under Armour. There was some, Under Armour changed the way that they were doing their slash promo. They were going into more of a rebate version than an upfront version, which was not what the contract was set up for. And in doing this, Under Armour basically had asked BSN to get out of that contract. Once that happened, we shopped it around and actually talked with BSN and another company and looked at the other brands that we could look at and it came to consensus with the administration, the high school administrators and the ADs, that we would pursue a BSN contract, but use Nike as our brand. So this really deals with just the uniforms, and it deals with the high school uniforms for Nike. The discounts are still the same as the old contract, so it's still, we still have that. The district part of this, where we come to some numbers on rebates and stuff, that's still the same. Actually, we were able to get BSN to lower that number. If you notice that from the last contract, we moved that down to try to give us some more support. And they've promised that anything that we do on the what they call team stores, which are these electronic flyers, that I've made sure that they agree that the parents would actually get that benefit as well. So if we did, say, shoes, Nike shoes off of that, and they were at 35% off, it was on that, whatever that price is with the discount. So the parents would, in all essence, would gather that discount as well. So I think it's important that our parents get a break because, let's be honest, sports are expensive, and sporting equipment is expensive. What other questions can I answer for you guys?
Kathy?
Are the students still required to pay a fee to join a team or to play on a team?
We still have the pay to play, which we've had forever, and that is still at the rate of whenever I started coaching in 2001. I believe it's $50 for 3 sports. It's $25 for reduced, and it is $15 for free and reduced, which is very, very much lower than any other district around us.
Thank you.
Hazel?
Yes, so we have the uniforms from last year from Under Armour. Will we still be using those?
Yes, we'll still use those until their cycle is out. So whenever this was created, and I inherited this from last year, but when we created this, we also created a uniform cycle, which is based on a 5-year cycle, which is a really good cycle for our kids. So those teams that were in, that received Under Armour uniforms, they will finish out that cycle. Those will go another 5 years, and then those will be back up for the Nike uniform.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank you,
that.
guys.
I move that we adopt E16, the Nike Athletic Uniform Agreement. Moved by Stan, seconded by Kathy. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under Finance, Budget Report.
Kelly?
All right. So before we jump into that, to answer Kathy's question, $312,000 is what you approved last year for Wichita Transit Authority, so it's gone up. So if that answers your question. But it is the cheapest option to transport kids, so it's a good thing it's gone up because it's saving us money other places. That's it. That was all I needed there. So I'll pass it off to Susan, who is sharing her update for the budget.
Welcome, Susan.
Good evening, President Reeser, Superintendent Bielefeld, Vice President Albert, members of the board. Tonight is the first look at the formalized fiscal year 25 budget, the forms that are required to go to the state. They were completed and hot off the press as of Friday, so they have several reviews that we still need to run through and some checks. So we don't anticipate much change, but the caveat as to the numbers I present tonight is that they could tweak a little bit until we actually come back to you for the notice of hearings. A reminder to the board of the budget timeline. Tonight, again, is our first look. August 7th, we will come to you and request a notice of the revenue neutral rate hearing that we would hold on August 26th. And after that hearing, barring any changes that the board would want to make, we would request the notice of the budget hearing for September 9th. And then on September 9th, we would recommend, after that hearing, the adoption of the budget and the revenue neutral rate, the resolution to exceed R&R. So that's our remaining timeline. If you recall, we started meeting on budget items as early as January, so it's been a journey, but we are approaching the last leg. So to kind of start tonight, and the print is a little small for those here, but I've given you copies of the PowerPoint, plus you have a copy of the draft version of the Code 99. We're going to start with the general fund FTE estimates. And I want to start here because the bulk of our budget, which is the general fund, is driven off of student counts. Right. So those estimates that we build into the budget are important to understand. I think Ms. Miller had asked for some detail around this at the board workshop, so I wanted to spend a little time kind of running through these assumptions. The very top line is the base FTE. So when we talk about FTE times base aid per student, we really are talking about the number of full-time equivalents that the district has, full-time equivalent being a student that is with us 6.5 hours a day. Obviously, pre-K are not. Most of our pre-K students are half-day, but we have other students that only attend an hour or two a day, or they may come in for a half a day. There's various FTE in other categories as well, but the bulk of our part-time are pre-K students. But the base FTE is determined by new state statute, either your current enrollment or the one-year look back with a one-year kind of bridge year, and that's what we're using, is the average of a one-year look back and a two-year look back. So that first number, the 43,269.8 FTE that we're using for fiscal year 25, unless our enrollment grows, that number is static. That won't change. Okay, and that is the blend of 1 year, this year and last year. Next year, the budget will be either based on current or 1 year look back. So that shouldn't change. We don't anticipate it changing, because if our trends continue, we should see another slight decline. But that line item in particular is a line that we don't know what that looks like with open enrollment. This is new, the open enrollment state statute change for fiscal year 25. So it makes it hard for us to forecast that when there's no data to look back at. So we've built the budget based on the 1-2 year look back average, which we're allowed to this 1 year. But theoretically, if enrollment goes up, that number will change. Otherwise, that's the number we'll use for the budget. The low-high enrollment is a mathematical computation based on the base FTE. So again, that number will be dependent upon that. The base FTE shouldn't change. We don't anticipate that changing. The rest of the numbers listed, pre-K, career and tech ed, transportation, at-risk, bilingual, and what's CAMS, which is a Fort Hays program, those numbers are based on current year enrollment. So those numbers are truly estimates. This is where we believe student counts will land for fiscal year 25. We won't know that in actuality until 9/20. And then we won't know if that's a good number until sometime in February when we get our audited results. So there's a lot of things that happen during the course of the budget cycle into next year that modify these numbers. And that's why we actually gave you the fiscal year 24 adjusted in comparison, because that's not, if you look back at fiscal year 24's budgeted FTE, that's not what we budgeted. That's where we landed for fiscal year 24. And those numbers are all, for the most part, less than what we estimated, which again is purposeful. We estimate high because we don't want to have to come back and republish the budget, number one, but two, KSDE wants us to estimate high. They would prefer to know kind of the max it could be, and then if it audits down, they're fine with that, but they really don't want it to come back and have to add more money based on what we turn in the budget. So there's two purposes for estimating high. So you can see really when we look at fiscal year 24 actual to fiscal year 25 estimate, we're not anticipating a whole lot of change. It's really just going to be about flat. Again, not knowing exactly what open enrollment impact will have. The other piece, and we've talked about this a lot, is we don't know exactly where at-risk will land. That number is driven off of free meal applications. We know that there has been some direct certification numbers that have been somewhat static and stable post-COVID, which we believe this year will change. So that number may modify down as well. But we're kind of going with what our best estimate is at this point. We think based on just the populations kind of increasing that we've seen in free and reduced meals, that number could go up slightly. It might audit down a little bit. So I'm going to pause for a moment to see if there's any questions on our FTE assumptions as we build the budget for this year. Pre-K, career and tech ed, transportation, again, for the most part, we anticipate most of those budgets being somewhat stable. Bilingual is up a little bit, and that has to do with the change in our model to provide services. Previously, we were having kids move to specific buildings for ESOL services, and now we're going to offer ESOL services where those kids actually would attend and reside. So they don't have to get on a bus to go get ESOL services, and which is a big change for us. This will be a really exciting change for families to be able to access those services in their neighborhoods.
Right?
No question is a silly question.
Okay, so on this transportation, what we've just approved with the Metro Transit Authority, is that figure in here?
It will be, right? The Transportation Department gets that overall transportation budget, and they've got to live within the budget. So that's when he brings you items for whether it's Everdriven or the Metro or for student, he knows he can't exceed the total budget in that line. If he does, then he's got to come and have some other conversations, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do.
Well, here you've got $2,020.
That's FTE. That's not a dollar figure.
Okay.
These are just the student counts
Okay.
that get us to the dollars, which I'm
I
going to
get
show you
Okay.
here in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Melody?
Thank you. Susan, you may have already addressed this when I was out for a moment, but what's the rationale or what's the thinking behind the 127.2 loss in base FTE?
So that base FTE, and you are correct, we covered that, but I'm going to cover it because it's important, right? This is a change this year. In the previous formula, it was a 1 or 2 year look back for enrollment, and the reason it was that way is because the state at the time, who was experiencing some fiscal challenges, wanted to be able to predict what enrollment was going to be, and so they didn't like the current year enrollment model because that was an unknown until the count date, which is until September. Now that the state has pretty sufficient reserves themselves, and there are growing districts that do struggle with not being able to access current enrollment, the state legislature made a change to allow for current year enrollment or a 1 year look back, which is how the law will work next year. But for fiscal year 25 only, for districts like ourselves that are in decline, they allowed for the combination, the average of the 1 and 2 year look back for 1 year. Okay. And that's where that number's coming from. That's the average of this year's enrollment applying to next year, this year 23, 24's enrollment, 22, 23's enrollment, the average of those two.
Right. So these are actual numbers, no estimates?
Correct. The first 2 lines are actual.
Okay.
The pre-K on down are estimates, because those are based all on current year enrollment. That's been statute for a while. That's what we have to estimate what we think we're going to land in those categories.
Thank you.
Now, what does this mean for us in dollars? When you take those weighted FTEs, right, and you multiply them by the base aid, you come up with a total for the general fund. Then you add in virtual and you add in special education state aid to come up with the overall general fund budget, which is all being derived from Form 150, which is in the budget book. That's the form you'll look for. You'll see all of this whole calculation when the budget actually prints. You can see that the adjusted budget for fiscal year 24 was almost $415 million. We are anticipating fiscal year 25's budget at almost $447 million, which is an increase of $31.8 million. That does exclude any of the state aid reimbursements, like for mentor teachers and juvenile detention. That money primarily went to the wage package. That's where new money went. The board had approved that actually last year because we anticipated this base increase. That's why the package was what it was. That impact also flows down to the supplemental general fund or the local option budget, which again is a percentage of the general fund. So as the general fund goes up, You can have 33%, up to 33% of that for your local option budget. That's what we're exercising. So we will also see an increase of to almost over $10 million in the local option budget, which again helps us with transportation, utilities, insurance, wages, and the mandatory transfers to at-risk and CTE and bilingual.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Melody.
So go with me for a moment on this. Could I state, or could I make the comment that this increase of 31.8 million I don't even know if I want to say it, but basically zeroes out the deficit that we were last year?
So when we brought to the board that whole deficit picture, we knew we were going to get new money.
Yes.
Right? So we knew what the wage package was, which is a little unusual. We typically are in the negotiation process, but we had that number because we had negotiated a 2-year contract.
Right.
So all of this new money was part of that, because we gave you, here's what we anticipate in revenues.
Right.
Here's what our expenditures are. Here's our shortfall. So those monies were in the revenue number we gave you.
It was in the original.
Correct.
So it was,
Correct.
that deficit was a
Yes.
deficit, period.
Correct.
Even though you're stating that this basically will pay for the teacher pay.
The entire district's wage package, which
The
included,
entire district
right, the
wage.
5% to the base, step, tracks, longevity, the increase in supplementals, increases in overtime, the increases in the taxes on those wages, the entire package, that's what that's what new money provided you in fiscal year 25. Those deficits that we were addressing were primarily related to us retaining ESSER positions and the previous package that we didn't quite have enough to cover, that we had used ESSER to fill that budget gap, and that was a few years ago. So this particular, and again, you could count this money towards any one of those other things, right? It was the entire package of here's your revenues, here's your expenditures, here's where you're short, and then we started to do those cuts. But all of this was embedded in that original number.
Got it. Thank you.
A few other key funds that typically board members are interested in, the federal funds. So here is a really good first look at the impact of ESSER falling out of the budget. Federal funds last year, our total was almost $76 million of spend. Our budgeted expenditures will fall probably in the $44 million range. That's it has about $3 to $4 million of ESSER funds left in there. The remainder of that is Title I, nutrition services, Title II, Title III. So you really see that ratcheting down of federal funding as those COVID relief funds come to an end. You can see our at-risk funding is fairly stable. Special education is increased partly because of the new funding that we're receiving in special ed. And then we always budget a little higher. We've had a really good hiring season for special ed. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So you can see that reflected in those higher expenditure categories. Capital outlay, we are finishing some of the projects that we began with that were part of our entire ESSER approach. Plus, again, we approved some additional money, or hopefully you will approve some additional money through that 8 mils on the capital outlay. So we'll have some additional funding we can put towards repairs, maintenance, deferred maintenance activities. Bond and interest is almost flat. And then this does reflect the $6.8 million of contingency reserve that we will use to offset a mill levy increase in the supplemental general fund. We talked a little bit about this at the workshop. If we had not done this, the mill levy would have increased by about 2 mills. By doing this, we actually decreased the overall mill levy by 0.6. And we'll show that here in a subsequent slide. But that was intentional, and we really had been planning on doing that as we saw cash balances in the supplemental general fund dropped to basically nothing because of the issues we were having last year. Okay, so when you look at that Code 99, when you get back down to the bottom and you see there's a total USD 259 expenditures, and then there's the transfers between the funds. So the net USD 259 budget, the legal max that we can spend per fund will be almost $971 million for fiscal year 25. That's with a mill levy of 51.354. That's what we had shared at the budget workshop. That's a decrease from fiscal year 24's mill levy of 0.6 mills. It is 0.146 less than what we published on our revenue neutral rate. So if you recall, I asked for a little bit of flexibility. We were still able to come in a little bit under that, which is what we had talked about. So we will, if we are solid tonight, we will proceed with that plan of a 51.354 mill rate.
And Susan, what was the budgeted 2025 expenditures? 2024, I'm sorry.
Actually, the final, I'll get that for you.
Okay.
I've got it on my other laptop, so I'll pull that up for you. Just to show you where we are on the taxation impact to a homeowner, and I just used our $200,000 example from the workshop. The fiscal year 24 school-related taxes for general fund, capital outlay, and all our other mill levies would have been about almost $1,100 for school taxes. Next year, if that same home is worth $200,000, taxes would go down $90 because of action we've taken and action the state has taken to reduce the general fund mill levy exemption on residential property. So if you weren't experiencing any sort of appreciation in your house value, you would actually pay less taxes next year. If you do experience an increase in valuation, which most homeowners are, so I'd probably, that's not a fair analogy to say it's flat, but if, let's just say you went up 8%, then we're still just $4.76 higher than this year, with the offsets from the state and our action at a 0.6 reduction in the mill. So hopefully we've hedged most of that increase of valuation with that action that the state has taken and that we are taking through this budget process. This chart shows you the mill levy since fiscal year 12. You are again at a 14-year low. The last time it was, we were at 51.484 2 years ago, so we are now a little bit below that. You have to go back to fiscal year 15, and we were close at 53.7, but you are at a 14-year low. Now that just covers the very high level of funds, which is what the board's kind of obligation is as far as passing a budget. You pass a not to exceed a legal max at the fund level. But the next level down from that, we really get into that funding allocation process, which is how do we spend this money? How are we allocating it to achieve student outcomes, to do the things that the board is setting out as far as its goals are concerned. And we've talked about how we approach staffing. Again, we look at the class sizes. We make those choices as we look at, as we get to the end of the year and we have staff turning over. We look at those areas where it makes sense to maybe pull back on one classroom teacher in a building that maybe has 4 sections but is probably ready to go to 3 because of student movement and various factors, but still maintaining relatively low class sizes. Special programs, so those students of higher needs, we do look at the number of students, the types of needs, the programs in each school, because some schools have a lot of programs, the square footage in those buildings, and we make allocations accordingly. We don't do it in a vacuum. We have all of those various departments that are providing that feedback. So special education, ESOL, behavior, the newly formed behavior group, child study teams, all of those divisions kind of impact where those FTE all land for staffing purposes. They look to see where are the students, and they move those resources accordingly. Certain schools with higher poverty obviously also have title funds that they can bring to bear and layer in those additional school supports. We did talk a little bit about how the weighted funds and the kind of those maxes in those areas do impact decisions, right? From an ESOL standpoint, we probably would like to have more staff than we currently have, but there are only so many funds, so we try to allocate those across the district based on the needs, but knowing that we can't meet everything everywhere, right? We can do anything we want, we can't do everything we want. And then knowing that the primary purpose of our at-risk funds are to keep the base school class sizes as low as possible. That's your primary use of at-risk funds. We have other programs that at-risk pays for, but the bulk are teacher salaries.
So, how many schools do we have that are not considered Title I?
So none of your high schools receive title. None of your special day schools, so none of the special ed centers receive title. They may have there might be some off-the-top programs so they may have some indirect benefit. There are 2 or 3 for middle schools. I believe there is 1 K-8 that doesn't receive title, and there's 3 to 5 elementaries that don't receive title. The bulk of our schools receive either the regular allocation of title, or they're just reaching a threshold where they're starting to receive some title dollars.
Do we ever think that any of our high schools will reach that threshold? Where are we?
So the challenge with high schools is there's a lot of students, right? So the minute you start adding in at the high school level, then you're diffusing what those dollars can do. And so when we do this school-wide program and we really focus on elementary and middle, getting those kids the services they need, so again, that K-3 reading, those important milestones, 5 to 6 transition, we have taken that approach that embedding those dollars in those early years will make the 4 years in high school an easier process.
So are you saying, or are we saying that is a priority in terms of the way in which we disperse those dollars? I noticed you just looked at
The priority being the younger ages, is that what
younger
you're-
ages, more so than looking at the high need that's also in our high schools.
Yeah, and it comes down, I think, to a balance of, how thinly we spread our resources. I can't say the other districts I've been in that I've worked with Title I handled it the same way. A dollar spent as early in education as possible is the best dollar you can spend. Sure. So that's part of why the theory, I think, with Title I is let's invest early, try to intervene, try to change trajectory there. And not that it would be dollars wasted at the high school level, but, with only so many dollars to go around, that's how the decision's made.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I'm looking at, so is there an ability for us to be able to obtain additional dollars at the high school level, or we are actually receiving dollars and we're prioritizing utilizing those dollars at an early age, at an early stage, which is elementary?
So
are
we're
there
not-
any other
right.
title dollars out there that we could actually receive, is my question.
So just because we're not serving high schools doesn't mean we're not getting our full title allocation. We are getting what the state is passing through at 100%. And we have made that choice as opposed to spreading that out so it is so diffused you're not getting very much lift, particularly at some of the smaller schools that really don't have a lot of resources compared to a school of 2,000 that has fees and fundraisers and different things that they can do at the high school level that you don't see happening at the elementary and middle to a certain extent. But we are maximizing what we get.
Sure.
56 title schools.
56.
Is how many we have in the district.
Okay, yeah, out of the, 80, and I'm thinking about programs, 89-ish or 80?
Okay. The non-staff budgets, right, we handle several of those centrally: transportation, insurance, utilities, repairs and maintenance out of capital. the planned student and staff technology. No school has to cover those expenses. That's all handled through central allocation. Schools do receive discretionary budgets for instructional materials and supplies based on their school needs. And then if you have higher populations of poverty, we have built into our school allocation model a weighting, if you will, for additional dollars for those schools. So if you are a high poverty school, you are getting more dollars, and that's outside of title. So if you are a high poverty, you are getting additional dollars from the district. So that's school discretion. Principals can decide how those funds are getting spent. So that there is a voice in how funds are allocated at the school level with those budgets. Then again, those certain schools have title to help with those supplies that aren't being brought in, maybe students who come in and don't have crayons and the school supplies that parents of certain economic stature can afford. So that's where title comes in and fills those gaps, along with the many other programs that we have that help students with those kind of needs. So all of that, right, all of those allocation pieces come into play and really kind of coalesce around the budget needs assessment process, right? We're really utilizing the feedback that we're getting from those needs assessments to really direct fund. And I think probably this year more than ever, and maybe it's because we did go through a very extensive engagement process and we had to make very difficult decisions related to cuts, that we probably have more engagement and feedback material than we've ever had before as we've made budgetary decisions. So this, I feel very, very solid that this budget did what the public wanted, which was fiscal responsibility, but getting funds to teachers and to classrooms where they belong, with the hope that we're going to see those outcomes improve year over year. So again, the state has its requirements where every building has to complete a needs assessment. It's published on the website. They've been out there actually for a while because we actually did this work last fall. And then we provided that to the Board of Education. We'll cover that again at the meeting that we go through to adopt the budget. We have to do that by statute. And then Wichita Public Schools requirements, we have to do that as part of the site council meeting. There's meetings with building leadership teams that occur. They complete that needs assessment. And then they also, if there is a barrier and they have a need that they want to address that barrier, they have to put in a budget request for it. So there is a whole process on our internal side in addition to the state requirements. This timeline, again, actually started last fall because we knew that we were going to have some difficult budgetary decisions to make, and we wanted that feedback to really influence those decisions. So we began that in October. We requested those forms come back in December. We provided you a lot of that feedback when we met in January through March. And then we obviously covered some of the more heavier details at the workshop that we had in May. But those kind of the four major barriers that we saw coming out of needs assessments that we have really spent the entire year trying to align to are on this particular slide. The barrier of teacher recruitment and retention, we saw that through all of the needs assessments. That's why that package was important. Getting that beginning teacher salary to a $50,000 level, retaining staff, not having them want to basically, I'm done, I want to finish that. This created that attractive situation to get them to stay. Additional staff and resources for student support. This is where we retained a lot of our ESSER school positions. It's the entire reason why we made that choice. That's what you saw through your needs assessments. Don't take those resources away. Particularly the increases in the child study team, the behavior intervention employee supports, anything that was really focused on behavior. Keep those resources intact, and don't pull all those paras out that we added through benefits. Keep the paras as long as we can. Student attendance, we saw that a lot, and you're going to see that coming through in not only the expansion of the everyday labs through the elementary levels, but also that retention of those ESSER-funded secondary mentors that are really working with students that are experiencing those problems with attendance. So you've got a number of initiatives I'm sure that someone can probably speak to them a little better than I can, but this has been a focus in the budget. Attendance continues to be a focus in the budget. And then the building improvement needs, when you look at the percentages, right, curriculum people feel pretty good about, other supplies they feel pretty good about. We get to the status of the buildings, those percentages really start to kind of fall because your buildings are looking for support. Repairs, maintenance, improvements. This is a lot of the reason why we've been spending a lot of time on the facilities master plan and the discussions around a potential bond. So I'll pause, I think, for some additional comments.
Well, thank you, Susan. And I asked Susan to, I think she did a really good job with the buildings and the needs assessment and tying it all together. These were data-driven decisions, right? We took the feedback from the buildings. We provided it to you guys. I mean, you've seen it, but to show that, 82 out of 88 buildings say attendance is an issue. So we need to respond to that, and that's what we're trying to do. I think we'll see, not to steal the thunder of the next few slides, but we'll also see how, the theory that we had moving forward with back in January and February and March with closing buildings, it was about solving a budget issue. But as much as anything, Susan kept saying, this is a staffing issue. We have year-to-year vacancies, and we can't fill them. And we've tried a good wage package, and we've tried recruitment things, and we can't fill them. So by having fewer classrooms, we can fill positions. And I think for student outcomes, one of the best things we can do is put a qualified teacher in front of kids and have substitute teachers on deck, so to speak, so when we need people for maternity leaves or sickness or whatever, that there's people to step into those roles. So I hope we see the alignment. We did a lot of listening this year, and I just hope that it's clear that listening worked. We've heard from the field what matters. And especially for number 2 there, the additional staff resources, we would have at times people from the community bring us these spreadsheets and say, look, you have more staff than you used to have, right? Ha, I found it. This is where your budget cut is. We knew all along, right? We knew that. We knew we were making a decision on staffing to keep staff, especially in mental health supports for counselors, social workers, and school psychologists, because that's what the feedback was from both parents and from the buildings, right? And so we deliberately made that choice and made other decisions, and we're going to continue to make other decisions, right? We're going to continue to look at becoming more efficient and leaner, especially at the non-school sites throughout the course of this year. But I just want to, I hope, tell that story that all of the feedback in the community, the things from teachers, the things from staff, the things from community, it's here, right? And we're really trying to honor that and support our buildings to move forward so that we can improve our outcomes, right? That's what we're all here for. So, Susan, you can take it back.
So, yeah, this is the exciting slide, right?
Susan,
yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you,
Go ahead,
actually. Thank you for the pause.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you in how it is that we've been through some challenging times. Our methods, I think, were accurate and correct and based on input. So when we talk about being able to overcome a deficit of approximately 32 million, and I think it started out at 42 because of some additional dollars from the state. It was reduced to 32, and in that we increased specific areas, including salaries for staff and additional individuals for child study team, period. So with that, we were able to maintain and keep those individuals in this year's upcoming budget, and with the additional dollars that we received from the state for FTEs as well as special education, we are actually going to be in the green. It appears as though that's where we're going with that. And we're not increasing our mill levy either. That's what I'm being able to walk away with. Is it somewhat accurate?
Yeah, we're not quite in the green, right? We talked about that, we got that additional sped money, that we were going to need to use some contingency while we worked through some of those non-school cuts this upcoming year.
Yes.
That work still will need to happen. That's, again, $4 to $6, maybe $7 million worth of work, but far less than the 12 we were looking at before those additional sped dollars came in. So there's still a little work to do, but it is significantly less than it was. And again, because you can't operate your budget in the red, right? So you have to balance.
Right.
We will end up utilizing probably some contingency at the end of the fiscal year 25. You don't see that line item in the budget because we don't know what that looks like. So many of our numbers don't kind of finalize until later in this fiscal year. So we're going to wait, because you can use contingency on June 30th, right? You can move it then. We don't have to make that decision today. The only decision related to contingency we needed to make in the budgetary process was the use related to the local option budget mill levy. But we're in good shape as far as the actions we know we need to take that are difficult, but they're not the difficulty we had in the spring.
Right. So we're about to go green. Let's put it that
We're
way.
at least, we're close to balanced. Yeah. Yes, we're very close. And I think what's very, very exciting is this slide. You've got the very first couple lines on the chart show the summer hiring. You can see 22 summer hiring for certified teachers have been running in the 400s. We hired 206 certified positions through the end of July, and actually that includes one we just hired today. So that means instead of 423 new teachers, which is great in a year, we love new teachers, but from a workload perspective, that's half the number of teachers, new teachers, that new teacher, induction has to monitor and provide support. That's fewer new teachers that principals and buildings have to manage and help. So you've got, and only 200 new teachers in classrooms. All the other classrooms, 200 plus, have experienced teachers in them. So that's huge. And exactly what we wanted to accomplish as part of a very, very difficult decision to close schools was to impact these numbers. You can see the paras are had half as many hiring than we typically did, because we were able to move those paras from closing buildings and they took positions in other buildings.
So I want to make sure I understand this. These numbers are a direct result of our decision in the spring.
Yes, they're a direct result of your decision in the spring and then some other budgetary items that we made through the course, but 100% this is impacted by that closure decision, absolutely.
And this is good.
It's even, the bottom chart's even better. The top is a 1 year, right? We'll see what the turnover looks like next year. But the vacancy work here is tremendous. We have 8 elementary vacancies, not too much different. Look at the middle school vacancies. You have 4 compared to 24 and 29 in the previous 2 years. You have 8 high school vacancies compared to 24 and 14, and special ed is half. 25 sped vacancies. We haven't had 25 sped vacancies in a very long time. This is tremendous work on part of HR, really working this, our ability to move staff into vacant positions to fill those spots, and then we'll reap the benefit of having experienced teachers in classrooms. And with that number of subs, we pretty much can almost say that the majority of the subs going into those long-term assignments are going to be probably our retirees, right? You're going to have highly qualified subs that are in those open vacancies, more subs than for daily call absences.
How many do we have right now? Do you know offhand?
How many subs have taken long-term?
Going into this next year.
I believe Sean told me they've actually made arrangements for about half of the number we need. So we're still looking for kind of that final half to finish it out. But they're still actively hiring. Like I said, they just hired a chemistry teacher today. So this is exciting. This is exactly what we had hoped we would see.
Melody?
Just looking at, going on with paras also.
Yes.
I think that's phenomenal.
93 para vacancies.
Paras
Half.
are just, they're crucial.
Yes.
We gotta have them. And so to see that change, I think is definitely a plus.
Yeah,
Definitely.
lots of things to celebrate here. So that's all I have on the actual first look at the budget. I do have a little bit on the bond question. So I did want to share a little bit of information related to the potential timeline for the board to make its decision on whether it wants to move forward or not. Obviously, we are looking at bond as a possible long-term response to some of those building needs assessment needs. But there is a component that is a little time sensitive. It's around KSA 725461. And what that particular statute does, and it's probably easier to talk about it by example, is every year the state relieves bond debt, right? We pay our bonds, Olathe pays their bonds, everybody's paying their bonds. So every year the KSDE analyzes how much bond principal got paid off. So let's say 400 million got paid off in 23-24. So for 24-25, the state won't issue more than what they paid off in new bonds. Big districts like us, we would only hit that cap. So like, again, we would exceed, if we would go with the $450 million, we'd exceed the total, right? So they don't do that for big districts. For big districts, we would count towards that bond cap not to exceed 175 million. But it is a first come, first serve application process. So applications go into the state board, and most districts have to apply because they're exceeding their debt limits. So you apply, you get approval, and then you get looked at and compared to the bond cap, how much was paid off last year, how many other school districts have requested bonds, and so there's kind of this running total. Well, right now we're fine, right? Because I think only Ellenwood has gone to the state board. The further we get into the fiscal year, the higher the risk of other districts going in that will hit the bond cap. So we're fine, everything's good, except for at some point it might not be good. I don't know when that would be, right? I have no idea what other districts are doing. KSDE is not necessarily able to share what everyone's thinking and planning, but I would imagine some districts are like us, they're right in the middle of kind of planning their mill levy, and so that might be the following question is, okay, we've planned our mill levies, what are we doing about a potential bond issue? So just understand that as more schools come in that would meet that criteria of hitting the bond cap, there is some risk that the district would not have the ability to access the amount of bonds they want to because we would have been too late, and we would have to wait a year. So this is a weird little thing. It's fairly new in statute. It just came in 1718, so it is a little unique. When it first came out, we were all worried we were going to have to race to the bond cap on June 30th. You're filing your application at 11:59 p.m. Subsequent to that, there's fewer districts actually receiving bond state aid, so there's not as many districts that hit the bond cap, so it's not quite as difficult as it once was, but there still is some risk. So I wanted to share that with the board, that at some point we probably will need to talk about when do we want to potentially go, and I would certainly recommend sooner rather than later in the fiscal year. And with that, I would ask the board if they need anything else from at least financial services and really facilities or any of the other divisions at this point that you want us to bring back in order to help you determine that timeline.
Diane?
Throughout that process with the state, what is our level of commitment through that application?
So you do have to, it is fairly involved, right? You just can't throw a number without the plan and how you're going to spend it, and it's when you kind of want to do so it is a fairly involved application. They want you to make a number of decisions related to that. The board would have to pass a resolution indicating it was ready to proceed with a bond. So there are a number of steps that we would need to have in place before that application would be accepted.
So,
Hang on, Kathy. Go ahead, Donnie.
Could you provide the board a list of those items that we
Yes.
would need to decide on? And then what level of commitment are we being tied to with the state with that application? Like, what is our opportunity to make changes after that application is processed? Because just to be clear, the voters have not said yes
Correct.
or no.
Correct.
This is a first step process
Correct.
before we can go to the voters.
Right, and the application does take that into account, right? I mean, they know you can't go to the voter until they approve you exceeding the debt limit, right? That's part of the application process is, in our debt limit for Wichita, it runs right around $420, $430 million, maybe upwards now, $450. Well, with our existing debt, we will far exceed it if we ask for another $450 million. But the board can approve that, and they will potentially look at the fact that we have those existing bonds basically cash flowed. So that will be part of that. But they know that you've not run an election yet. But they've got to approve the debt limit part of it. But to your answer, yes, that's exactly what I was wanting from the board, is the things that you will need in order to help you guide that discussion. So I have a list of items to decide upon and what changes can be made once the application has been filed.
I also think it would be helpful if we have clear communication that can be posted on our website to inform the voters, the taxpayers, and the parents that we serve on where we're at with this process. Because I think a lot of people will misinterpret this as we have passed a bond because the board has voted on something or done a resolution, and so that it makes it very confusing. So if we can have an infographic, a map, something to clearly communicate to the public where we are at in this kind of complicated process.
Very good.
Kathy?
okay, I just want to make sure I understand this. The cap is 175 from that, if we apply, that we would receive from the state.
Well, that's how much that, in the total bond availability at the state level, if we ask the state for a $450 million issue, that's where we want to come in at, they will take that first 175 and apply it to their bond cap. So that if, let's say, no one else had asked, 400 million's available, they approve ours, they will count us as $175 million that they have to take out of that bond cap money. They ignore the rest of our issue because we're big, and it would kill everybody else, so they don't penalize the smaller districts for big districts like us.
So this is not the bond issue?
No.
Okay. Having said that, if we do get approved for some monies of this bond, would that decrease the request for the master plan of the bond issue?
Not related to our facility master plan at all.
So can we use that money from the state to go toward our master plan?
So they don't give us any money, right?
Okay.
They just say you can pass you can send this to your voters. They basically give us the blessing to present it to the voters. They count 175 of that against the statewide bond debt. No one else, once that 175 comes off the top, off that 400 for the total state, there's only $225 million left for everybody else. We will still ask the voter to approve 450. They will have to pay for that through their bond mill levy. We don't get that 175 million from the state. That's the approval related to the bond cap.
So the application to the state is that an application to present it to the voters?
It is an application to exceed the debt limit, yes, to present to the voters.
Thank you.
And
Melody?
thank you. I just wanted to confirm that I'm actually looking at.
Oh, the code 99,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so it was 859, I'm looking at the budget for.
For last year, yes.
Yes, for
Yep.
2023, 24, 859, 508, 314 compared to the 970.
And if you look at last year's budget, which is the number I was going to look up for you, this is, that column there is actual spend.
Oh,
The
yes.
budget was over 900 million.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it is, again, which is, again, just goes to show a lot of those numbers are high until we actually kind of go through the fiscal year. We get those adjustments so that we can't exceed those new caps through the whole, all funds. So that's why every single one of those actuals is less than what was published in the budget in the previous year. And that's intentional.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you made that point very clear. Yeah, because I thought I remembered it being
It
like
was. We were close to a
969.
billion, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
989. It was right at a billion.
970.8.
Yep.
Last year.
Thank you, Addie.
Last year.
Yes.
Oh.
970.8
Okay, okay. But we came in at 859.
Anything else related to the?
Oh, I would still like the weighted funds. The definition for, not the definition, but the actual weightings for at-risk. I guess it would be a low enrollment, all of them. I can't even tick them all off. Yeah, it's a bunch. I would.
So you want to know how it gets weighted? Is
Yes,
that-
mhm,
okay.
I would. Yeah, I think it'd just be information, good information. I don't know who else thinks like that, but.
You can take this slide number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, slide 3. Those are the actual FTE weightings times 5378. And those are your dollars in each one of those areas.
Right.
But I can give that to you in a dollar form. We
I'd
can
like
do
the
that for you.
itemized, thank you.
Yes, we can do that.
Appreciate it.
Diane, did you have?
I do if we're moving on to general questions, but I think we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I have the budget takeaways, but you guys, I think we can move on to this is
Okay.
everything we've talked about tonight.
Okay, we'll take general questions now. Diane?
Going back to slide 14, when we're talking about additional staff and resources, Kelly, if you could expand on, I don't think most people know what child study teams are and behavior support. So if you could kind of briefly explain what those investments are for and how we use those.
Sure. So the Child Study Team is the team of people that work with students that might have particular needs. So in most school settings, this is a school psychologist, a school counselor, a school social worker, sometimes the nurse, sometimes the physical therapist, sometimes the occupational therapist, along with the teachers and the administrators. So CST, we particularly here, we define that mostly as those support staff of social work, counseling, and school psychologists. So over the course of ESSER, or post-pandemic, we all know that there was a particular acute need for mental health for kids. There's a lot of dysregulated kids. So we invested and hired more in a lot of those areas. The feedback we got through the needs assessment and honestly through the school closure process, all the way back to last May of 23, when we did a full staff ESSER survey, was that those were critical to maintain. We need our counselors, we need this support in our buildings. It does tie back to our facility master plan, right? Because the model of the school, the 4-section school that we've been talking about, if we take these 2 smaller schools and we put them into one, we can more efficiently and more effectively staff those schools with a full-time child study team. Currently in our district, not every school has a full-time child study team. So there might be a social worker that goes 2 days a week to one school and then 3 days a week to another school. So if there's a situation that arises that is emergent, there may not be always right away that person there to help that kid that might be in crisis, that might be dysregulated. All that being said, we've maintained those levels of staffing, right? We've tried to keep those ESSER levels of staffing. It will be something we continually evaluate every year as the feedback comes in from the buildings, as we ask parents and community members, we may see overall students are more supported, they're more regulated, so maybe we can pull back a little bit on those staffing, but we'll keep an eye on that and monitor it. But that decision that we made as a team, we being the board and administration, was really based on community feedback. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then we went over this during the board workshop, but could you remind us again what the wage package cost was from the last negotiation? So that would be the wages for this school year.
So the value, the dollar value of the wage package across all groups, so administrators, teachers, your technical groups, and your classified staff was $28.5 million of spend. So that was a significant investment in wages for the point of retaining staff and getting those starting salaries up so that we can recruit and be more competitive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Melody?
Thank you. Yes, and this question is for Kelly also. Under student attendance, the everyday labs, if I recall, and not so much the everyday labs, but the secondary mentors, are they one and the same?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah. Everyday Labs was a company that we contracted with that helped with automated text messages and reminders and stuff. And it's great that I have a team because they're sending me this information during the board meeting, like in real time. I feel like I'm on CNN or something. So thank you to Gil. Every school that had Everyday Labs last year saw a decrease in chronic absenteeism. The lowest decrease was 3.8%, and the biggest decrease was White Elementary, which was 12%. So they went from around 60% chronic absenteeism to about 47% chronic absenteeism. So that's why we're continuing to invest in that more. There's probably an effect of what you focus on, a measure you focus on, right? And so there's probably a degree of that going on. For the mentoring, which is another ESSER initiative, the Future Ready Advocates that we continue, that's more of an individual mentoring program where adults work with a caseload of kids and talk to them about goals and behavior and hope and dreams and aspirations. And then at the high school level, graduation, credits, great, intentional great conversations. Mm-hmm. So does that answer it?
It does. With the exception of what's the extent in terms of capacity? How many students how many secondary mentors do we have? How many students can we impact?
Yeah, that's a good question that I don't have off the top of my head.
Okay. I'd like that
Yep.
information also. And then I'm thinking about our goals. And so when we talk about how important belonging is, and we know that the face-to-face, actually having a person to let a student know you matter, you care, we need you here. In fact, we want you to be here. We want you in the classroom. We need you to come every day. That's why I'm asking the question about the secondary mentors. What's their capacity? How many students do they mentor? And is this in any way also related to what we're trying to do? I think it's once again goal number 2, when we're going to be assessing and tracking students in their advocacy, where we can ensure that all of the different opportunities that they have are, that they're being exposed to that. That can help with graduation. It can help with linking them with programming that can enhance their educational experience. Is any of that what I would say, does it go together? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So you'll notice, and as we continue to, this is kind of the last meeting. You won't hear about the strategic plan probably till next summer. So as we begin the cadence of talking about the strategic plan every meeting now, you'll see that these overlap, right? The attendance goal that we have for our interim goals lives in goal number 3, which is safety and belonging. But attendance is a life skill, And attendance also ties back to graduation rate and school readiness. The 5-year plan that we hope kids create under goal number 2 is their route to graduation, right? And it's a route to life readiness and post-secondary success. And hopefully they get into classes they want and they feel like they belong, right? So there's a lot of interconnectedness throughout all of it. Even, you know, the examples, the summer examples that we had for good news items tonight, those weren't necessarily academic programs, but what an example of life readiness and social skills and all of these things that we want to get kids ready for the future. So, yes.
One of these days, Kelly, I want to be like you where I can just actually fluidly put all that together. One of these days.
Thank you, Melody. I just wanted to, I just wanted to summarize real quick to make sure that for anybody watching tonight, if everything stays the same before we approve the budget on September 9th, if you have a $200,000 home, your property valuation probably went up to about $216,000, and we are asking for $4.76 on top of what we asked from you from last year. And that's
$4.76, yes.
yes, $4.76.
Yes.
And that's kind of for the average taxpayer, that's the information they need to know and what they want to know. All this other discussion is interesting, but your eyes are probably glazed over right now. But bottom line is, for a $200,000 home, your valuation is probably about $216 this year, and the Wichita Public Schools is asking for $4.76 in order to continue the progress we've made with student outcome for this particular year.
I think that's a good recap.
And what I've noticed is my favorite snack at Kroger just went up $2.99. So I think when you compare the quality of education and the average price of your favorite snack, then it's probably a pretty decent bargain. My favorite snack at Kroger's went up $2.99. I'm not gonna say. I don't want everybody to know what my favorite. What my vices are.
I do want to clarify that the increase is from the property valuation,
Correct.
not
Yeah.
from anything that the board is doing. The
Correct.
board is actually decreasing the mill rate, but because your property value the property value itself is increasing, that's why.
Right. That's why we showed the example of if your house was flat,
Yeah.
that there you would actually have a $90 decrease in your tax liability to the county. It's because your valuation went up that you'll owe the $4.76.
Right, the part of the budget that the board is going to approve is actually decreasing the mill rate.
Yes.
That's the part that I want to be clear on.
Correct.
And I was just trying to be honest
the
with
bottom line
with
is
the
$4,
revenue
right.
neutral thing, and also too the fact that this is a perfect opportunity. I think I appreciate you bringing that up, Diane. It's a perfect opportunity to give some thanks to the state legislature who did some effort on property tax relief as well this year.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would have been in that $90 range. And if we would have tried to capture the whole 8% valuation increase, it would have been far more than $4.76.
Yes. The numbers would not have been nearly as good for the taxpayer.
Okay. We appreciate this budget update. And yes, Julie.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
No.
We were closing
I was
out
just about to ask if
questions.
there's any last round
Okay.
of questions.
Yeah. When we had our workshop and we were talking about a potential decision on the part of the board to put a vote to our community relative to whether they did want to pass a bond issue, we acknowledged that time was kind of the essence. And you gave us an additional item that we weren't even aware of in that discussion relative to this amount of
Yes.
bond,
Cap.
yeah. So Diane had some great questions tonight as far as specifics relative to how to move that process forward. But I just don't want us as a board, you know, the year goes by so fast. I mean, here we are already, it's the end of summer and a new school year is starting. And I just don't want us to just, you know, meet every time we meet and have the time just kind of flitter away and, you know, have us get 3 months down the road and, oh, wow, we haven't made any progress or we haven't made any decisions yet. So I don't know what my specific question is, and maybe it's more for superintendent than it is for you. But could staff put together some sort of timeline for us, you know, based on the discussion that we had with the bond plan managers at our workshop and the ideal timing and the steps that come before that? I mean, could we have some sort of guidance so that we can keep track of where we're at and not have the year go on and we haven't made our decisions?
I appreciate you asking that, Julie, and I was going to make that announcement sometime tonight. The plan, and it does not have to absolutely happen this way, but the plan is by the August 26th meeting, we'll have another month of looking through the facility master plan. We will have opportunities at that meeting as well, but we'll probably, by the end of August, have a decision before the board or a vote before the board on whether or not we're going to have a bond issue and whether or not we're going to pass this facility master plan.
Okay, so that is the plan for August.
Now, if for some reason, circumstances come up and new information comes up before the 26th, and keep in mind, originally, we were going to try to have a decision by July.
Right.
By early July. And
and if we were going to put it in
Exactly,
the November
especially-
election, we were
yeah.
going to have those decisions made earlier.
So we definitely have added on another 30 days for everybody to really kind of get this information together in your head. And we will definitely try to have a vote on August 26th on this.
Very good. Thank you for that information.
And I do think maybe by the 7th, I don't know if we can commit to that, we could have that timeline, a draft timeline, right? So because there's kind of, 90-day chunks of different time, deadlines and things like that. I do think that's something that's important for you guys to have so that you can see what does this look like from beginning to end.
Yeah, and so that we don't
Yep.
get behind
Right.
without being aware of the fact that we're getting behind.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under reports, United Teachers of Wichita.
Welcome, Katie.
Hi, good evening. Do you want me to just shut this? Okay. Let's see. Well, good evening, Superintendent Bielefeld, President Reeser, Vice President Albert, and distinguished board members. I wanted to start tonight by expressing my gratitude to the superintendent for encouraging principals to allocate dedicated time during in-service days for staff to complete their annual policy sign-off tasks. This highlights a genuine commitment to prioritizing safety and ensuring that our educators are not burdened when taking mandated policy work home. Additionally, I'm pleased to share that UTW recently purchased a book for every incoming kindergartner into Wichita Public Schools. Cultivating an early love for literacy is essential to fostering a lifelong passion for reading among our students, and we're excited for the students to receive the books. Budget cuts have undeniably negatively impacted our schools, students, and educators. One thing to take note of is that some of our buildings have had multiple programs and initiatives that they are expected to put into their daily lessons. I was surprised to hear from a few elementary educators recently that as we've had to scale back some of the various initiatives in our building, that they are seeing a decrease in their workload. So that was kind of an interesting result from the budget cuts. Today marked the start of in-person enrollment, and I had the pleasure of visiting Northwest High School to sign up my son Dane for his senior parking spot. You could feel the excitement for both the students and the staff for the new school year. So it was good to see everybody and be in the school, and we're really, really excited about the school year. We recognize that while challenges will arise and we may not always agree, we greatly appreciate the superintendent's effort to listen and incorporate educator input into the decisions that impact our educators and their students. And we're looking forward to a great school year. Talked to lots of teachers. They're really excited to meet their students and some of them are already in there getting their classrooms ready. So, yeah, thank you.
Hey, Katie,
Yes.
Hazel?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the books that you're giving the kindergartners, are they all the same book?
They are. They're Clifford Goes to Kindergarten, and they'll be in their like welcome pack when they pick up the kindergarten student and parent go to do their enrollment.
Okay, good. I was just wondering what book you chose, so
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
And Katie, we know that's not your first book giveaway, and we appreciate everything that teachers do to facilitate this love of reading, which is the foundation. We appreciate the teachers on that.
Thank you.
Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under reports, Service Employees International.
Esau told me he was not going to be able to be here tonight, and he will see us at the August 26th meeting. Next item, please.
Next item, under reports, Superintendent's Report.
Kelly?
All right, thank you. And like Katie, I went by Hyatt Elementary today and started off on the waiting list for Latchkey. But by the end of the day, I was in, so I was excited about that. Even the superintendent gets on the waiting list if you don't show up on time. So thank you, Ms. Cross, for getting back with us. So enrollment's underway. We're excited about that. I'm excited to get everybody back in the schools. We're excited about Rally in the River next week, and hopefully we have good weather and not too hot for all the staff to get together and celebrate. I want to pass this around. If you go vote at the primary, you will receive the sticker, and I've told you guys about this, that was created by a Mayberry Middle School student. So I just want you to be able to brag about that on social media when you go vote, both in the primary and the general election. So we had the winner for Sedgwick County for that. I did also want to mention, the two opening good news items. When I told Lauren and Wendy about the idea, the gist of that was, some teachers don't work in the summer. They sit by the pool and relax, which is great. A lot of our staff are working hard, taking kids to DC, taking kids to France, doing all sorts of things. So the work doesn't stop in the summer, and the learning experiences are deep and rich even in the summertime. So I wanted to make sure we lifted that up. And then the last thing, and I'll pass these out, and this is just a chance for feedback from the group. This is, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this will be the last meeting that we don't talk about the strategic plan for the year. So what we're creating is a cadence of progress monitoring, accountability, and reporting out to you all, and as importantly, if not more importantly, the public, for what we'd like to do, how we want to achieve our goals and our student outcomes that we've set forward. So, as you know, some of this data comes in annually, some of it comes in 3 times a year, and so what we'd like to try to create is a pattern of reporting on the data and the progress we're making throughout the course of the year, along with having some of those operational and finance things that we need to do too. So look that over, provide any feedback you have. It's editable and tweakable. It's a draft, but I wanted to give you an idea of kind of the longer picture. Ultimately, districts that have been doing this a while will have a 5-year plan, right? So we know in 2029 in September we're going to be reporting on Fast Bridge or whatever it is. So we're starting this off at a year chunk to see how that works and to make sure that we're meeting everyone's needs. But I just wanted to put that out there and allow you guys to have any feedback you have for me on it. But that's all for my report for tonight.
Thank you, Kelly. Patrick, next item.
Item under reports, Board of Education.
Any reports? Patrick, next item, please.
Next item under miscellaneous, new business.
Seeing no business, next item.
Next item under miscellaneous, Board of Education requests.
Any Board of Education requests? Next item, please.
Next item under miscellaneous, adjournment.
And before we entertain that motion, just to remind the board, on August 7th, we will have our special meeting for the R&R budget consideration. And then we're gonna, for the very first time, we're gonna have our very first agenda review workshop on August the 23rd. And so we'll see how that goes, and hopefully that will be an exciting change for transparency for the public. And then our next board meeting is August 26th. And that will be, the 7th is at noon here at AMAC.
That is correct.
The 23rd is noon.
The meeting on the 23rd it will be at AMAC. I believe the time is at 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
in room 809.
Okay. And then the 26th meeting is?
6 p.m. Wichita High School.
And
North
that is a
Lecture Hall.
regular meeting, and we're back at North High on that day.
Correct.
Okay. I move that we adjourn. Moved by Stan, seconded by Diane. All those in favor? We are now adjourned.